from a simple suburban childhood playground ornament to a mystical, ancient portal to the gods. The frog gods. The gods that are frogs. Ah. Okay. G'day everyone, Dicko here with another kick-ass walkthrough. And in this video, I want to talk about how photogrammetry has become a tool available to the masses. And why is that? Not only is it easier than ever to be able to create 3D models with anything around you, whether it's from your home or out in the public or, whatever you have in mind, and create amazing high fidelity 3D models for whatever purpose you may think of, whether it's for AR, your own animations, building out scenes, you name it. This software is now available and easier to use than ever through a number of softwares. But one of the biggest things that has happened in the field of photogrammetry is the release of the latest update with Substance Sampler. If you don't know what Substance Sampler is, well, it's a tool that allows you to scan basically anything in the world and convert it into textures. But recently, in the last week or so, they've released an update that allows you to actually scan anything around you using photography into 3D models, and that's known as photogrammetry. And normally, before this came out, photogrammetry was kind of fiddly to get, and some of the software would either take forever to get done, and the results were always kind of middling at best. But with the latest update to Substance Sampler, we have the ability to create really good, high fidelity 3D models from any object that you can think of with your very own camera. And it's pretty fucking amazing. More than that, it is powerful in that it integrates seamlessly with the other softwares developed by Adobe, such as Substance Designer and Substance Painter. That being said, there are new softwares out there as well, particularly for the Macintosh, which allow you to do this stuff for free, which is also pretty crazy, which I want to explore as well. All right, I will say off the bat before we move on to creating what we're going to create is that this video is more indicative of what I would say is a more realistic way of production as an independent artist. So if you're working on a freelance basis and you're trying to get things done on time, or you're trying to develop ideas quickly, the use of paid software such as Sampler or other things like plugins that I may be showing off in this video as well is indicative of something more realistic than just trying to save $1 on everything you do. Not everything has to be done for free. Not everything has to be done from scratch. Not everything has to be done by hand. That's the way that things work nowadays. And Blender, although it's free, is great. You still need to have a little bit of a leg up every now and then. So if I'm recommending what I'm recommending here, it's that if you like what you're seeing here and you want to try it out for yourself, just download the demos, download the trial versions of the softwares, give them a go. And if you like them, buy them, whatever. Or if you find a free alternative that is almost as good, then feel free to use those as well. So there are plenty of free alternatives out there, like one of the scanning softwares I'm going to show you today. And of course, there's alternatives to Substance Painter, such as Quixel Mixer and stuff like that as well, but they have their own caveats. But that being said, I hope you find this video interesting. I hope you still get something out of it. And when it comes to Blender, it's still pretty cool stuff that we're going to show off today. So let's jump right in and take a look at what we can create. All right, so here we are in Substance 3D Sampler. And the process is pretty simple. Just push the 3D objects button, the plus icon, choose the images that you want to use for your scan. I have 25 JPEGs of this frog, circling all around the frog, top and bottom, side to side, all that sort of thing. Make sure that all the photos are the ones that you want. In the case of Substance 3D Sampler, you do need to add a sensor size and a focal length of the camera that you took. I'm not sure if this is actually required, but I put it in there anyway in accordance to what my camera is. I had a SLR camera with a 23mm lens. And then once I've done that, submit. I'm going to set it to high poly, and I'm going to go with just the default settings. Once that's processing, I'm just going to switch over to another app that does pretty much the same thing called PhotoCatch. And this is a Mac only app. It's free to download, free to use, at least for now. And it pretty much does the same thing. I'm selecting the exact same photos here, setting it to high poly or high quality. And as you can see on the Substance side, it's made what is called a point cloud to show you what it's captured. And it's doing a pretty good job already. It's isolated the frog from the playground. And once you're happy with that, the mesh reconstruction, you just set it to high poly, in this case full, and I just push submit and I let it do its thing. Meanwhile, the PhotoCatch, I've already pushed play and it's just processing as we speak. So it's really quick and easy to do that one. It's literally a one-click button solution with PhotoCatch. Whereas with Substance, you get a little bit more options about what the quality is and stuff like that. But once you've started processing either one, they process pretty quickly. For me, on the PhotoCatch, it's a little bit faster. And I'm going to credit that to macOS itself because macOS actually has some photogrammetry algorithms pre-coded into the software itself, and PhotoCatch is literally utilizing those algorithms. Whereas Substance, it's a self-contained thing, I would assume. But the cool thing is, if you're using Windows, I'd say that Substance is probably one of the fastest photogrammetry tools out there now that it's been released. At least in my experience so far. And as you can see, the results are really, really similar. I mean, the isolation of the subject is pretty much identical. The detail is, again, pretty much identical. The difference is, of course, is that PhotoCatch is free and Substance Painter is not. But Substance Painter does have a few aces up its sleeve, which give it a little bit extra value. Keep in mind as well is that PhotoCatch on mobile, at least on iOS, is not free. So if you do your scans, you have to upload them to the cloud, and then it processes it off site, and then you have to pay for whatever resolution you want. So there is that catch there with PhotoCatch, literally. But looking at Substance, you can see here you get a few other cool things with the software. You can preview the mesh density, you can preview the quality of the mesh after the fact pretty cleanly. You can see how the UV maps work as well, how it's divvied up all the different islands. So if you click on a UV checker here, you'll see the UVs are pretty much just rooted. But when you see the scan and how it's clipped them all together, you'll understand why. That's literally just how photogrammetry works in a nutshell. You're not going to get really clean, quadded up geometry with any photogrammetry software. If you do need to have a quadded structure, you would have to either remesh it in ZBrush or Blender or whatever you can find that can do that sort of thing. But that being said, if you were happy with this model as it is, you can literally just export it out to any software and just be on your way. It's ready to roll. As you can see, some things aren't captured quite clearly. That's probably down to the way that I photographed the thing. And that's, you can see that like in between the gaps of the legs and stuff, they're not quite got the right detail. But that doesn't matter in my case because I plan on painting over that. So I'm going to export this out as a GLTF. You can export this out as any format you want. It doesn't really matter. The only reason I did GLTF because I was curious to see how it would work in Blender and also whether or not it exports out the textures as well. And I think it does. So let's just jump back into Blender and have a look and see how the two different models compare. So I'm going to import the PhotoCatch version first, which was an OBJ, and it does export out the roughness, metallic, ambient occlusion, and the diffuse. One thing to note off the bat is that I think PhotoCatch actually exports out at a proper scale straight away. Whereas with the GLTF that I imported at least from Substance, it is absolutely tiny. So I'm just have to be sure that when you export it out from Substance that you got the right units, or when you import it from Substance into Blender that you set the right units. But you can just scale it up, and again, it doesn't really make much difference. But again, looking between the two models, you can see that there's not much difference at all. There are some slight variations in the quality of the textures in certain areas and where it's sort of scanned certain bumps and details, but they're very, very, very comparable. One thing I've noticed, at least with the GLTF export from Substance, is that when you import it into Blender, at least with the GLTF, is that all the different verts, all the different faces are actually individually separated. So what you actually have to do is re-merge them by distance in Blender to make it a solid object. I noticed that to be, I'm not sure if that's a bug from the GLTF export or whether that is just a substance thing, but otherwise be sure to fix that up if you are going down the substance route. The other thing I wanted to check out was the difference between the UV maps of the photo catch and the substance. And again, they're quite comparable. There is some slight differences in, obviously, the layout. They're different softwares after all, but the overall scale of the islands are pretty much the same. Not that much difference. So therefore, the texture quality is going to be, again, comparable in terms of resolution if you set up everything correctly in either software. But that being said, we're just going to go with the Substance version. I've merged all those verts, and it does save a lot of verts, by the way, when you merge it. I'm going to re-export it out from Blender. Now, again, you can go with any format you like, whether it's OBJ, FBX, GLTF, I think, USD you can do now with Substance as well. So any one of those formats is fine. So I'm going to give the USD a go. Why not? And I'm just going to import it with the default settings in Substance Painter. I'm going to make sure that my auto UV tile workflow is turned off. And I've got a resolution of around 2K for the document resolution. Or no, we'll go 4K. 4K. Once I've done that, I'm just going to go ahead and import the file. And here we go. And the file is there, ready to roll. But as you can see, there's no textures in the Substance file as of yet. And this is where Substance Sampler really shines, because what you can do, instead of having to relink everything manually from just importing material textures into Substance to make a new material, all you got to do is export the material from Sampler in the material settings, set it to the Substance file asset format. So I think it's SBS or SBAR. Which one did I use? I can't remember. Here we go. SBAI is what I went with. Once you do that, you can just drag and drop that material from your file browser into Substance Painter. And as you can see, you can set it up with all kinds of things. By default, you have base color, normal, roughness, and ambient occlusion. And those are really useful passes that you can use in Substance as well. So again, there's my file from Substance Sampler. I'm importing that new material into Substance Painter. It already recognizes it as a material. And now all I got to do to make it visible inside of Substance Painter is to drag and drop it onto the frog. And before you know it, we have a high resolution textured frog in Substance Painter ready for editing as we speak. Now it's at this stage where the whole Substance Painter stuff comes in. And then this video is going to just sort of give an overview of how it all works, but this is not a Substance Painter tutorial. It's just a photogrammetry tutorial. But I want to go through the process in which I particularly wanted to change up this little froggy to be something completely different. Now, the thing about Substance Painter is that it's incredibly powerful to do this sort of stuff. You can, change the color of the whole frog. You can put graffiti on it if you want to. You can give it moss and mold and all that sort of stuff. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make it look like a rainforest environment statue. So it's like a hidden statue in the middle of the jungle that someone discovers and all that sort of stuff. So as I'm baking through all these passes, they're going to be really useful for masking out different features from the frog for texturing. It's always recommended that you bake down some passes out of Substance to begin with. I'm going to say that you can actually bring the photo catch stuff into Substance as well and do the same thing. Just going to manually set up the materials. Anyway, the intention here is to give the frog a bit of a wet look, like it's been rained on from the top. So what I want to do is give it a glossy material on the top and then have it sort of fade away as the rain hasn't quite hit certain areas of the rock. And the cool thing about this is that it's really easy to do with materials in Substance Painter because you just add a new material on top of the frog as it is, give it a glossy sort of texture, so remove the roughness, give it a bit of a darker tone, and then overlay that. And then I'm just going to be using smart masks and a blur function to give it that feeling of that rain hitting certain areas of the frog. Now, I want to give it a little bit more detail of, say, raindrops falling onto or dribbling down the frog itself. And it's at this stage I was painting it, and I'm like, wait a minute. I am in Substance Painter, which means I have procedural brushes. So instead of me painting all this stuff manually, what I'm going to use is a dynamic brush that will simulate rain falling on the frog. And that is friggin' awesome. But in the meantime, I'm still manually painting it without realizing that this thing exists because it's been a while since I used Substance. And, it does the same job. You can still manually do that. But as you can see, I'm actually just painting into the mask. I'm not painting the texture itself, which means it's very dynamic and very easy to fix if you make mistakes. So I can always erase things. Similar to how masks work in Photoshop. It's a very similar sort of workflow. So this is the point where my laziness kicks in. I'm like, screw this. I am not going to do the whole frog manually. I find a dynamic brush inside of Substance, which simulates rain. And as long as that brush is enabled and you got the right mask turned on, you can actually simulate raindrops falling on the frog. And as you can see, I've done my first sim. This brush is a little bit too small. So what I do, I up the size of the brush, give it another test. And what happens is that Substance simulates the raindrops falling on the frog, and each raindrop is essentially a brush stroke that is painted on the frog directly onto the mask for my wet material. It is amazing stuff. And of course, in addition to that, you can download like hundreds and hundreds of different materials from the Substance library online, as long as you have an Adobe account, of course. So I'm using whatever I can find, moss, vines, other things like that, to add more and more character to this frog. And this is a lesson for anyone who wants to become a professional. Yes, you can learn with the freest of free software. You can learn with Blender, you can learn with Krita, you can learn with GIMP. You can learn with any of those softwares and get pretty proficient at it. But eventually, those programs that you use, you start to realize that they're actually really slow to use. They get in the way of the process rather than saving the process. And that's where finding professional tools comes in. And that's when you start to charge people extra for your services to be able to afford these tools that make your life easier, faster, more efficient, and you end up, generally speaking, creating better and better content. It's always good to have those free alternatives, but eventually it's always a good idea to start investing into your career. And that includes software, that includes learning resources, that includes anything that makes you a better artist. Actually, scratch that, anything that empowers you to become better at your craft, more efficient, etc. All right, so as you can see here, here's the difference between our standard scan and a few additions that I made in Substance. And as you can see, I added a few other things as well. Like, imagine that the frog isn't just one giant piece of concrete, but built from stone bricks and then sculpted from those bricks, which is kind of cool. I've added a lot of moss, I've added a lot of like grit and grime, wet patches, dry patches, all that cool stuff. I've added some vines to the base of the thing because it's going to be covered in vines. Yeah, this is the end result. And it was just a simple matter of just painting in the details where I wanted them, and then exporting out those texture maps from Substance in a Blender format, which is cool. Substance now supports Blender style texture maps, which is recognized by Blender automatically with, Node Wrangler, which is also really cool. So, you Control Shift T and then select your maps and it automatically links everything up perfectly, which is perfect for me. So it's easier than ever. Put it that way. It's easier than ever to get amazing results in not a lot of time. Okay, so we've scanned our object using Substance 3 Sampler. We've brought it into Substance Painter. We've edited it. We've added to it. We've enhanced the 3D model in an interesting way. And now we need to take it to the next level. We need to turn it into an actual scene. We need to bring this object into a scene that is completely otherworldly, something that is completely different to the origins of this little frog. All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to turn it into a ancient temple of the frog gods or something like that. And with the help of extra assets out there on the internet, I'm not even going to model much of it myself. We're going to turn it into a rainforest scene with statues and portals and water and all that sort of cool stuff. And a lot of these assets are going to be downloaded using Quixel Megascans. And again, this is one of those tools that if you're paying for it, it pays dividends as a freelancer. However, if you want to try it out, I think for free, you can actually use Megascans with Unreal Engine without paying $1. I think that's the case. So check that out if that's the case. If you want to use Blender, it will cost you a monthly subscription, or you can buy credits or whatever. Otherwise, of course, you can just go out of the house and just try and scan more stuff and put it all together manually. I mean, if you have a park around, you can just scan some trees, scan some rocks, do whatever you need to do. If you have the time, of course. I, of course, don't have the time. I created this particular scene in about 2 days. So I'm going with the paid option, but you can go with whatever option you want. So let's just jump right in and start to create something absolutely epic out of this little frog. Okay, so starting from the top, you want to get at least a decent camera composition. So choose a composition that you're happy with, and then start building out your scene. So what I'm doing here, I've got a subdivided wall. That's it. There's nothing else beyond that. And I'm using some pre-purchased alpha brushes from, I think it was from Flip Normals or from ArtStation, $5, $10, whatever, to sculpt out some rock faces. Way easier using alpha brushes. Obviously, you don't want to do it all manually. Again, you want to try and save some time. I went with building something manually there because I just wanted to add a little bit of character to it. Same thing with the ground plane. I'm not building anything beyond what the camera can see. So I'm not bothering going beyond the walls or beyond like the other side of the walls or the sky or anything like that. Whatever the camera can see, that's all I care about. Now, to get the assets that I need, I was planning on trying to find free assets, but I just couldn't find any that were decent enough for what I wanted to achieve with this image. That being said, again, if you were to photogrammetry or photo scan a bunch of plants and stuff like that, you could probably get away with just doing that. I'm using Quixel Megascans here. You can use whatever you like. But it comes with some really cool stuff like ruins and trees and all sort of stuff. At first, I was just downloading them one by one. And then Quixel said to me, wait. Why don't you download Quixel Bridge? And Quixel Bridge is a freaking lifesaver. Suddenly, what was taking me minutes, maybe hours to put together some assets, I was doing in seconds. Basically, Quixel Bridge is a download client for all these 3D assets. And as long as you have an account with Unreal, you're good to go. And the cool thing about the Quixel Bridge software is that it links up directly with Blender. So basically, you just choose whatever you want to download, you download it, and with a click of a button, choosing your level of detail objects, it will send it directly to Blender. And then suddenly you have textures, you have assets coming in directly into your scene. Whatever's open, it will send it to that scene. Friggin' amazing stuff. The plugin is actually free. The plugin to make it work with Blender is free. There are some free assets I noticed on the Quixel Megascans website as well. So if you may be able to get away with just using the free assets from the library there as well. I jumped into Substance again to do a little bit of extra texturing for the terrain, although I wasn't quite happy with it because the resolution wasn't high enough, but it was usable because eventually I covered it with plants. Now, another thing I found was a $7 plugin, or not even a plugin, it's just a geometry nodes tree that I bought from Blender Market, which automatically generates vines over whatever you have in a collection. It's again, this is the one caveat I say about my statement earlier about free software. Blender is the exception. It really is the exception when it comes to efficient, fast, enabling software. Things that make you a better artist, make you more proficient, and it's fast. Blender is fucking incredible. The fact that you can get this stuff for $7 as well is mind-blowing. And it just creates these cool vines all over the object. So I wanted to have all these vines all over the frog, and it just generates it for me. And the way I made it to make it work with my workflow, what I did is I just drew the vines using grease pencil, and then I converted it to a curve, and then I applied the geometry nodes node tree that I bought onto those curves, and it generates all the vines for me. And as you can see here, there it goes. It's just insane. Again, another absolute lifesaver. I didn't have to model a single thing there. It's generated for me, and it gives me the vibe that I wanted. Again, $7 saves you hours of work. Absolutely incredible. $7, insane. From there on in, back to Bridge, I started to lay out a few extra vines here and there across the terrain, although they do generally get caught up with, covered up with plants in the end. But it's a nice little flavor to add as well. Also, the material with the vines wasn't great. It's just a single green vine material. So I ended up changing it a little bit with a downloaded texture from Megascans. So I just found the tree material or texture, downloaded that, applied the texture to the vines in a really shitty way. It was good enough for the image, and Bob's your uncle, good to go. Again, the vines are also fairly low poly, which is actually to our advantage here because you don't want to overload your system. But a simple subdivision on top of that gave it the softness that I needed for the bottom vines on the ground there. All right, so after I finished the vines, I was ready to start populating my world with lighting and also with some really cool assets. And that's where the Quixel Bridge stuff comes in full power here. That being said, you'd be surprised how much adding a simple principled diffuse to your world material will do to improve your render quality. It is actually insane. If your renders are starting to look still a little bit shit, despite the fact that you put all this effort into it, add a little bit of atmospheric haze. And you can do that really simply with Eevee, at least, with a principled volume connected to your world output. Bring down the density, change the color slightly to give it that atmospheric look, and suddenly, like, glows look really good. The haze makes everything have enough depth in it, and it just looks amazing. All right, so there on in, basically, I started bringing in Quixel Megascan trees, and I wanted to have rainforest trees, and luckily they had a pack of I'm not sure, ficuses to download, and I just plonked them in, good to go. And this is where I discovered the power of Bridge. You just click a button and it imports to the Blender. Absolutely insane. The other cool thing as well is that it's fairly quick. The only problem with the plugin is that it seems to fuck up the materials a little bit, so you have to go in and tweak them a little bit. So for instance, the normal map went into the transmission and you just like relink them. But it's still a massive time saver despite the fact that it had that mistake. That's a bug with the plugin, it seems. But apart from that, just start populating the thing. I used a hair hair dynamics to generate hairs along the terrain, which were then being used to instance the plants. So I'm not placing anything individually. I'm just generating them with a hair modifier. You could do this with geometry nodes, but it's just quicker when you're in a rush to do it with hair, in my opinion at least. And then adding some depth of field really helped as well. Apart from that, I needed a character, so I just went to Mixer mode, downloaded a knight character, downloaded the rig, downloaded the model, and then I just posed it for this render. I could have added animation, but I couldn't be bothered. I ran out of time. But just pose it up and get it ready for the shot. So I wanted to have the character, or the knight at least in this case, look like it's walking up the stairs toward the portal, about to enter the portal. So again, a simple little pose, nothing too crazy, wasn't going too realistic here, enough to just get the silhouette from the glow of the light hitting the front or hitting back of the knight, and that was enough. And after that, it was just more about lighting, tweaking the light positions, tweaking the camera a little bit, animating the camera, and then rendering out the video. And then I just did a little bit of color correction inside of After Effects, and we were done. So that's it for today's video. I hope you found it enlightening. I hope you found it inspiring to create your own kind of things just by scanning your own objects, or by using the different tools out there to help you with creating your own worlds. I love doing this sort of stuff myself. I'm going to be probably doing more, of course, in the future as I start to build more and more animations. I want to keep doing this sort of stuff. But it just goes to show you the kind of tools that are out there and what's available is leaps and bounds more than what it was even just a few years ago. The accessibility you have to different tools such as Substance Sampler, such as PhotoCatch, even Blender and Substance Painter, you name it. It's all there for you for the taking, and you can utilize it to your advantage. And not only that, is if you're a freelancer or if you're a budding professional who is looking to enhance their portfolio, these are all there for you to take power of, all right? You don't have to go through and create everything from scratch. And by no means does anyone expect you to do that nowadays. You should be looking at your options and seeing what there is available to you and what the advantages are over paying for something versus doing something on your own, which may take hours, days, or even weeks to get done, when you can do it for far less time and potentially make more money when you are just paying for the asset and then just billing the client for whatever you're using. Or you just integrate that into your costings. It's pretty straightforward. Think about that in the future. If you're becoming a professional yourself, it's really useful to understand that these tools are there for a reason. They're not there to just for the company to make money. They're there to empower you as well. And you should be taking advantage of that. Anyway, I'm going to let you go. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, notification. If you want to support me more, of course, there's Patreon. And I'd appreciate you doing that if you want to join the conversation, of course. Other than that, I'm going to let you go. Thank you for watching. Catches and have fun. See you later.